Hello and welcome to another episode of Last Week in Localization, the show where we talk about the latest from the world of localization, whether that is research or news or events, and whatever else might be interesting to you if you are working in the language industry or you want to learn more about it. My name is Sarah Hickey. I'm the VP of Research at Nimdzi Insights. And today with me, I have a very special guest, our CEO and my wonderful colleague, Josef Kubovsky. Hi, Josef.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, evening, afternoon, or night, wherever you are, whatever you do. And thanks for having me, Sarah.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's great to have you. Josef, I think in the language industry, pretty much everyone knows you because you've been around for a very long time and you're a very sociable person. But maybe there are some people who don't know you yet or people who are from outside the language industry. So maybe just give a brief introduction to who you are and what you do.
Sure. Thanks, Sarah. Once again, hello, everyone. Very nice to see you, have you. Thanks for listening. I've been in the language industry for about 20 years now. I like to start with saying that I'm a sixth generation of a translator, although I'm a black sheep of the family because I was never really a professional translator and I never studied translations. But I still ended up in this industry after studied international relations. The most exciting part is that my great-grandmother was an interpreter for the emperor from French, Hungarian, Slovakian, and German back during World War I in Slovakia. And then grandmother is a translator, and basically my entire family is full of translators, language teachers, and stuff like that.
Wow, that's really impressive. I had no idea, even though we've known each other for a while now, I did not know that your grandmother was an interpreter and on such a high level as well. So that's really cool because, well, as you know, and maybe some people out there as well, I am a trained conference interpreter. And actually, my grandmother always wanted to be a conference interpreter, but never got to be one. So it's funny that we sort of have that in common.
Nice. Yeah. One of the interesting things that we wanted to talk about today is the impact on these individuals, right? And we're seeing a lot of conversations around where do finances go, what are the large players doing, and stuff like that. So maybe we could go a little bit that direction as well today. What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, definitely. So exactly, let's introduce the topic of today's talk. We wrote here that it's the M&A heat wave in the language industry because, it's summertime, it's hot in most places at least. And it's also that M&A is on fire once again in the language industry. This isn't exactly new anymore. I think since last year, really, we've seen so much consolidation in the industry, of course, and topped off with the massive one, the merger of RWS and SDL. And now just recently, TransPerfect bought Semantics, also an absolute household name in the industry. And yeah, so let's take a look at what does that mean for the industry and the different stakeholders in the industry. Because yeah, as you said, too often we just look at the financial side of it, which is of course a big part and probably one of the main drivers behind M&A, logically. But exactly. But what about the other people involved, that are not the directly the investors? So yeah, give me the latest.
What is really interesting about this combination specific? Let me start with first reacting to what's going on between TransPerfect and Semantics. I think there's two extremes, right? First extreme is that I know both of the companies for at least those 10, 15 years, following them, having very close connection to both. I have to say that for me, TransPerfect is a very typical US type of organization, focusing on revenue, focusing on, drive, winning as much business as possible. When Semantics is an organization that's focusing on quality, satisfaction, full satisfaction for their clients, making sure that everything is running smooth and presenting themselves as the thought leader and someone who really can be treat them as the best partner ever. So I'd say this, national conflict, or the different profiles, or even personal profiles, right, of each um, persons who would be representing the company. If we say, okay, what is semantics? You would say it's typically European. If we look at TransPerfect, it would be typical American for me. And I'm very excited to see how will these go together, because for me, I've heard very interesting stories about salespeople working for TransPerfect. Those who have been very successful have been treated super well. At the same time, if you're not overachiever, it will be very difficult for you to stay in TransPerfect. At the same time, in semantics, they are very focused on people making sure that they are, representing the company properly. They are, putting the name out there, and it is definitely, of course, about revenue, but it's not hunting. And I'm very excited to see where this will go.
Yeah, definitely. And I really like what you said there about the different company profiles. And you could say, on the one hand, then maybe, at least from what you've elaborated there, that there might be kind of opposites in some ways. But at the same time, I mean, that can sometimes be exactly what you need, right? To bring a business
Yeah.
further, that you bring something else in that you don't already have, right? That's usually the goal anyway. And as I read in one of the press releases as well, published in Multilingual magazine, the Phil Shaw as well, the CEO of TransPerfect, said that they've been competing with Semantics in the Nordics for like 15 years now. And I mean, I don't know this from him now or anything, but I was wondering then, as you said, the Semantics is very European, TransPerfect is very US style business. And of course, Semantics was always the biggest company in the Nordics and the leader there. Just wondering if maybe, it was in that sense a very, very smart move to get into the Nordics, because maybe, the European style is just preferred, similar as what we basically do in the language industry anyway. You need to kind of localize, right, to reach the right clients. So maybe you need to take that European approach to get in there.
Totally. Plus, I was really um, surprised by the message that TransPerfect is definitely, following the technology trend, where semantics has been presenting, and when we saw it today from the Semantics CEO, that they've been, for last 5 years, they've been presenting them as the thought leader in technology, and the leader in tech perspective. And the message from TransPerfect is quite clear. We want to be pushing our own technology. This is, there's not too much space for whatever has been outsourced. I realize, and I also want to say that, of course, it was mentioned that they are not going to change anything rapidly, or maybe not critically. But at the same time, I'm thinking, what impact will such a change in such a large organization have on the individuals? And now we can look at the different individuals, from project managers to the clients, but also the linguists, right? So I think that
Absolutely.
is going to be a very interesting change, where once again, the typical European process would be, okay, let's give it a time, let's think about it, let's proceed, let's make sure that everyone realizes what's going on, and they kind of accept the change. When the typical American would be, okay, you either go with the flow or you don't, right? So I think that would be another very, exciting path, not only with the sales, but also the production perspective of how are things going to go, and how will they go about it. I remember, when Semantics was picking their technology for project management, it took quite some time to make that decision. Everyone was, involved in the conversations. They were looking at it from many different perspectives to make sure that they're fulfilling all the requirements. So I would like to make sure that this has not been thrown out the window.
Yeah, I bet.
Now, yeah.
And yeah, you mentioned there also the impact also on the linguists a little bit. Can you talk a little bit more about that? I mean, you already mentioned some, but what do you
Yeah.
foresee, or what do you think will be the impact, maybe?
So, I'm when I'm seeing all of these acquisitions and the major changes,
Mm.
I'm thinking there's a huge amount of, you said it, it's finance, right? There's tons of money running back and
Of
forth,
course.
and people are making money on these acquisitions, and surely the investors are looking for profit, obviously, right? Um, if these are PE firms, especially, of course. But the question here is, what's happening with the money? Is this really helping us to progress, to turn the industry to become a better, are we benefiting from it as individuals? Is
Hmm.
the industry really moving forward? Or is this just, money flow from one position to another one? And I have to say the extreme is, if you look at the large acquisitions that happened recently, uh, with, not to offend anyone, but those that were acquired multiple times in a very short period of time. When I speak to the buyers, to their clients,
Hmm.
it's quite regular. They don't remember the name of their vendor. They don't remember the today name
Hmm.
of their vendor. And I'm thinking, that probably doesn't matter because they still work with the same project manager, but does it really? Or is
Hmm.
this creating an opportunity for the mid-sized or mid-sized larger translation companies who may then step up and just say, look, you're not going to be just one of our thousands of large customers, although you're a top clients in our top client in our region, but we will treat you as the most important one for us, and we will make sure that you are the name. And we may be acquired one day, but for today, we're actually sitting here, and we want you to be aware that our service is customized for you, and we will do our best to make sure that you are out there. Again, not saying that those large ones don't do that, but
No,
this
but
will
you have
be
a
a
point for sure. I think that especially these are questions that come up as well. With where does it leave the small ones or the medium-sized ones? And a lot of the times when we talk to them or the buyers as well, the answer is yeah. Well, they usually become more niche, or they can provide a better customer service because they can still be closer to their clients. They can tailor their services probably a bit better to their clients' needs. At the same time, of course, there's probably very little a company like TransPerfect can't do because they are so big, and of course, for depending on the contract you're going for, you need to have those volumes. But at the same time, I think the language industry is so massive that there's probably still space for all of those different types of companies. So that on the one hand, you have the really big ones that will go for the big contracts, and you have the smaller mid-sized niche providers that and then you have the one or two man shows that provide very specialized services. At the same time, you might be over time you might be running into an industry then where you just have a few big ones on the top, and then all the rest work for them. Well, that's an exaggeration, but you know what I mean, that then the other LSPs, just the small LSPs, work for the big LSPs again.
I'm a fan in investing in technology, honestly. My background is in translation technology, of course, where I spend a lot of time in my career in technology company. But I do see an advantage for us as an industry to be getting money for expanding the technology, because that really does help us, right? And we saw that from being the creation of typewriter
Mm.
or first translation memory tool, right? And now it's machine translation, and there's AI and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
we're moving forward, and it's just simplifying our work, right? As the industry, and it's moving us forward. But so I see a great advantage in that investment and
Mm-hmm.
in that direction. But for me personally, it's a little challenging to um, as an individual, if I look at it as the individual client or individual vendor, what is the advantage for me that there is so many acquisitions happening, and where are we moving? What is it giving me as the client
Yeah.
of a vendor that they have been acquired?
Mm-hmm. And yeah, one of the things you had pointed out there earlier was the brand recognition or lack thereof, I guess, with
Yeah.
a company being acquired over and over again. And while at the same time, the clients still get their services and I probably work with the same project manager, like you said, it certainly can't be a good thing for a company that if your clients don't even remember your name anymore, that's not the goal that people have in mind.
Sometimes it's good.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, there's many different sides to this coin, I think. And yeah, tell me a little bit more about what you think is the impact on the clients aside from this. You were talking, I know you speak to buyers of language services a lot, and maybe just I know you mentioned some already, but talk a little bit more about your experience, maybe.
Yeah. So we are. Recently I speak a lot with clients who are kind of in a, I don't want to say a blind street, but they feel like there is a need change needed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Either from the technology perspective that they see an advantage in using a technology themselves, or they have been provided a technology by a vendor. Now they're considering of migrating to another vendor. They can't because the vendor is not letting them. Of course, they're not letting them go away smooth. Or it's about the entire procedure, right? So we're doing a lot of audits of their localization team
Mm-hmm.
setup and trying to make sure that what they are doing is really, following the latest trends. What I like to say about this a lot is that most of these people are experts. They follow the latest trends. They understand a lot of things, and they would like to implement. They sometimes even have a very clear vision of how should things be structured.
Mm-hmm.
But it is extremely difficult for them to convince their, if we're talking investors now, internal investors, right?
Mm-hmm.
The main stakeholders. So very often we're not only talking about the processes but we're doing a lot of change management at the same time, and we're helping them to kind of explain to those who are not involved in the localization process that these things are needed to be changed. There needs to be some investment done and things like that. And uh, it's extremely difficult for you as an individual to convince your boss, hey, I need you to spend 300,000 or 200,000 on implementing a technology that they don't understand. Why do we need it if we can just get it delivered from our vendors, and stuff like that? So, and of course there's this ROI on localization topic, and that is even more complicated when you are structuring it in. So this is very challenging, and I think that the changing the names for me as a localization manager who's trusting my vendor and then
Mm-hmm.
going together with them to the internal investors, it becomes even more difficult, and that is, I think, very frustrating for the localization managers, because now suddenly there's, okay, it's the same person but with a different title, with a different
Mm-hmm.
company name. And now we're coming to my manager and we're trying to say, okay, I need you to invest 20% more in localization than what you did last year. I think that this must be tough
Mm-hmm.
for those people, and this is something that you should be considering when changing your name or rebranding or being acquired by someone who wants to change your setup.
Yeah, yeah, I see what you're saying. So you were saying that also. I mean, I know there are some situations, right, where both brand names are being kept alive as well. So, but I know that I think in this case, that's not the plan from what I know, but maybe I'm wrong. So don't quote me on this. But yeah, I mean, that could be a different strategy, of course, as well.
Yeah, and we also see that some of the companies are coming back to their names, right? So
Mm.
before SDL was changing the technology to SDL so that it's grouped and so it's connected. Now we're seeing that they're walking away again from that title, and they are considering keeping the name only for technology as it was before. But and I think that's the trend recently. 5 years ago, or yeah, something like that. The buyers or the localization managers, if I simplify, were rather considering buying a technology directly from the vendor and kind of getting it, one package simply, because when they went to their bosses, they would say, okay, I'm going to get the translations and some technology from these guys. And sometimes if you would be exceeding some budget, you would get it even included in the price. And that was much easier for them. But now it is more frequent that they actually want to be vendor agnostic. They want to have, technology separated from those vendors, especially as most of these buyers are looking into data, cleaned data, so they can use it for their internal purposes.
And
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but do you think that also, keeping technology separate from the vendor, that also the part of the strategy behind that is also to not be tied to a vendor through technology? Because, of course, on the one hand, as a vendor, you also want to ideally integrate with your client system as much as possible. It makes it, on the one hand, simpler for everyone. At the same time, it also kind of ties you a bit more with your client, because if they're using your system, it's not impossible to break apart after, but it makes it more complex. It makes it more inconvenient for everyone. So
exactly, it is so. And the typical scenario, I would say 80% of the time, you are happy that the vendor is also giving you a technology. But then the company grows, they start to grow and they realize, all right, we should use multiple vendors for many different reasons. Not only quality, but, they also want to have a stronger competition. They want to be able to kind of set the pricing a little bit better and stuff like that. And suddenly you realize, okay, I'm being pushed into a certain direction. And it's not that the vendor wouldn't provide me with the technology that would work well for me, right? Sometimes it works great. But the point is that if I want to unify multiple vendors and each one of them have their own technology, or sometimes one vendor doesn't allow the other one to use their technology, so I'm being stuck between two, and where do I go? And that's putting people into a very unfortunate situation. Plus, as you said it, if we want to split, it's going to be not impossible, but it's going to be difficult. And the difficulty stands especially because they're not going to make it extremely simple for you to walk away. Easy as that.
Right? Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's part of the strategy, right? And I actually had an interview with the company recently. I won't say the name now, but they work it's an LSP working in the life sciences sector exclusively. And they told me as well that apparently TransPerfect also offers a software specifically for the life sciences sector. I think it was for drug approvals and things like that.
Yeah.
And then if companies use it, they're basically more or less tied to using TransPerfect also for their translation needs. So, of course, that's a very smart approach as well. And I'm sure it's not unique in the industry. But I just thought of it there in combination. So it can go, I guess, either way as well with, even with bringing other technology in that is not language technology, bringing that in first. And then you offer the full package. This is something we identified in the Nimdzi 100 as a trend, right? That companies, especially the really big ones in the language industry, have started offering like adjacent services, as we called it. So services that are not related to language services anymore, but more, also maybe the verticals that they're strongest in, and to offer other services, and in this case also technologies, so that they can then provide this full package and also become like a strategic partner and go beyond just being the translation provider.
Yeah. And we can let someone from TransPerfect share their points here. How do they go about it? The typical scenario is that, if you have a certain amount, a certain volume, then you would get a technology either included for free or, with a certain discount.
I would actually love to talk to TransPerfect about this, just putting it out there. If Phil Shaw is listening, I would love to have you on the show.
Or anyone else.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Or anyone else.
And maybe we have Jack Wilde also listening. And this is exactly the case with SmartLink, right? What they did is that they wanted to go beyond the localization process. So they went more in the CMS perspective. And then actually that was exactly the case for many of their clients, that they simply the content management part wasn't good enough for them. So they wanted to, even if they were happy with the translation platform, or not all the divisions, not all the departments were satisfied with the CMS. So that was kind of, conflicting for the different departments. And now I'm a localization manager. I brought in something very exciting. It was simple. We were small. It worked. Now I want to keep it, but the different departments are telling me, no, we're not happy about it. We want to use our, I'm used to something else, especially when you grow to a certain level and they started hiring more senior people for the content teams. So it turns to be difficult if you are picking a package, if I simplify.
Yes, exactly. And I want to briefly come back also to, what we mentioned at the very beginning, this kind of, I want to say kind of like the gap widening a little bit in the industry. The bigger ones are becoming even bigger. The ones in the middle are getting bought up. And then over time, you have this big gap. And if we just briefly look at, for example, this is the Nimdzi 100 from this year that came out in March, focused on still the 2020 revenues. So here you see in the top positions, these companies are pushing the $1 billion barrier at this stage, very literally actually, because now RWS has acquired SDL and they're almost there, and TransPerfect acquired Semantics and they're almost there. So they're kind of fighting over the first place now, I think. Either way, there's like almost 1 billion, and then you see a sharp drop off after, I don't know, 15 here roughly. Even after the first 5 there or 7, there's a bit of a drop. And then again after 15, and then all the way at the bottom. Oh, actually, let's do one more stop here in the middle. Number 50 is already only 34 million, which is still a lot, but in comparison to a billion, so halfway through, we're already down to that. And at the end, we're at 12 million. So, and that is in the top 100 of the industry that, according to our estimates, make up about 15% of the industry. And if we include the watch list, it's about 21%. So in that portion of the industry, we are already going from almost a billion to like almost 10 million. So that is a massive drop. And I feel like that gap will keep widening as well with the M&A trends. I don't know. What do you think?
It's simple. How would the others be able to grow, if there was no M&A in it? So of course it will. The question you talked about the niche. The question is whether the niche will be, industry specific or product specific, or it will just be, we are not being acquired. We are, solo standing company that, had their own investors since the beginning, or we were just, growing and expanding slowly. And that might be interesting for those clients who are sick of the logo change.
Yeah. And I mean, for, I guess, any company that is backed by private equity will, I guess, eventually be sold again as well, right? Because that's usually the goal, as far, they go in, make some money, and then go out again. So that's something that we can already expect. And there are already, I don't have an exact figure, but there are a lot of companies in the top 100 as well that are already backed by private equity. And I assume we can expect more to come as well. But then maybe it's more, then you have a lot of privately owned ones still as well. Would you say that those might be more the ones that are looking at, those niches, that organic growth that might not want to be bought or, sell, or does it not matter so much?
Well, definitely. If you are looking, like, simple as, if I would want to invest and I want to have a financial opportunity in doing that, I would either have to go to those that are on the top of the list, to be able to generate, to be kind of, the ones who are standing out, or B, I would have to be looking at someone who's super niche, so that in the end, I'm going to be, passing this opportunity and maybe selling them to, once again, those on the top of the list. I think this goes back to, where is this industry heading? How different it will be in 10 years, maybe even 5 years from now. And my favorite quote, and I'm more on the optimistic perspective and just saying machine translation, AI, and all of that stuff is simplifying our life and just making our job easier as linguists, and also as content creators. But if you think this way, there is a possibility that AI will create a source content for you from any content that's available. So I can let the machine read newspaper and create an article for me in my language as a source language. And when this is possible, why would I want a translation if anything can be created in a source content, right?
Yeah.
Just go through the newspaper, read it out, and create another content for me, right? Or there has been a new machine coming out, and I don't need to write a manual because every single user will actually be generating, or every single platform will be generating the language, the source language for that particular tool. So, the question is where this industry will be heading to and what will happen in the meantime, because before that distinguish among those top 10, top 50, top 100 will be even bigger.
I like that point a lot. As in, I think you make a very different point than what we usually talk about it. I mean, it's not the first time I've heard about it, but I don't feel like we talk about it enough, because there's a lot of talk going on about, the influence of AI, but more in relation of, MT and like taking over the translation jobs and the interpreting jobs, even though that's a whole other topic now. And I don't want to get into it too much, but I like your point with, well, what if it's not AI to translate stuff, but to just create the original source content again? I mean, I don't know if that's applicable for every single scenario in the end, probably not. But for many of them, yeah, I feel like there will definitely be at least enough room for technologies like that.
Yes, for sure. The only challenge there is that it's any content that's already out there, and we are just reusing it, right? Or we recreating something. Whatever is new, whatever is, and whatever we have invented, that won't be generated by machine. But the rest of it, surely yes.
Well, plus, and then there's maybe an adjacent topic, and there's more debates as well about whether, or I think this is already happening, that if you already know that the content you're creating will be machine translated, that you make it more suitable for machine translation. And like I've read some interesting articles about that recently, if that's going to impact as well how language will develop, if we're increasingly starting to write things for machines and not just use machines to create something for humans. So there's an element on both sides, I think, that will be interesting to watch.
I don't think so. And I'll give you an example. When I started with David Chaniek 11 years ago, the first product that we were presenting was produced at the university, at the Charles University in Prague, by one of the three founders of MemSource back then. And Michal Kebert, who's the inventor of that idea, actually, or who's the engineer who put that thing together, was creating a platform that was giving a signal to engineers from a translation memory that, hey, you don't need to recreate this sentence because it is very similar to what your colleague have already created. And if you use this, there'll be no translation needed because it's already in the translation memory. Guess what? They loved it. Everyone loved it. When we spoke about it, they just loved it. But hey, no one was willing to invest in this because they knew that the engineers would just not want to waste their time by saying, oh, this is the best match. There's 2 or 3 matches. I'm going to pick this one. No, it's not their job. Their job is to write strings. So they're just going to write the strings. And same for content writers.
Yeah, good point. Okay, so I feel like we've covered a lot already here. Let's bring it around full circle. We started with the TransPerfect and Semantics well, merger, actually, they're calling it also. So I don't know if it's really a merger or an acquisition, maybe a bit of both. Um, but yeah, so and then we kind of drifted off into the wider industry, which was great. So, but just to bring it kind of home, as a final comment from you, maybe what do you foresee maybe in the more either what do you foresee in the more imminent future for the language industry, like the impact, or what do you think we can expect from TransPerfect and Semantics, a new combo, as you said, very different companies that are now becoming one?
Yeah, so I am very excited. Both companies are very interesting, you know. Um, I have very good relationships with both of them as well. So I wish them both success. I think it's going to be challenging, but it's going to be very educational
Mm-hmm.
for both parties. I totally agree with you that it was a good move for TransPerfect to enter the Scandinavian market, which is very much about relationship, and it takes quite some time before you actually close new business there because you need to build strong reputation
Mm-hmm.
and relationship. So if TransPerfect takes it the right way, they can educate themselves also not only for the European market but also globally. And I think for semantics, this is going to be very interesting move in regards to the drive of the sales that we've all seen. We've been all seeing for many decades
Yes,
by TransPerfect, if I just say it this way.
exactly.
So yeah, guys, best of luck. Oh yeah,
Fantastic. That's very nice statement to wrap this up. So thank you very much, Joseph, for joining me today. I had some fun. I hope you did too. And
yeah, indeed. It was very good. Thank you very much for pulling me in, Sana. I appreciate it,
yeah, anytime.
and I hope there will be some positive feedback. So you let me in anytime in the future again.
Exactly. I definitely will. And yeah, for everyone watching and listening, I'll see you next week with another exciting guest. So see you all there.
Give us some light, guys.
Yeah.
Right? Thanks. Bye bye.